I've had to do a number of retakes on this. This is part 3 of my response to Stefan Molyneux, where in part 1 I defended the liberal arts and the humanities against his attacks. In part 2 I took issue with his use of the label anarchist to describe himself. I have to admit that I am not a left-wing anarchist myself, or any form of an anarchist, because I'm a realist on human nature, but my realism is a realism willing to be persuaded by argument. In other words, I have enough respect for the utopian left anarchist tradition to say I could be wrong. But if I am wrong, then what is a possible alternative model that does accept the existence of capitalism, market mechanism, the state, and allows it to be reformed, at least democratized? And so that's what I'm going to get into with this video. Some of you on the libertarian left might disagree with some of the claims that I make or assumptions. This is going to get into monetary populism, and that's a possible red flag for a lot of people. People on the right will accuse you of being a collectivist. Some people on the left may lump you in with some unsavory characters who've been monetary populists. Just to be clear, I'm a descendant of Holocaust survivors. Attend a synagogue, so the idea, a liberal one, but a synagogue, so the idea that I would ever want to be lumped in with a bunch of anti-Semites is, completely against anything that I ever stand for or anti anybody else. But I'm going to lay out what I consider to be a scientific model of economics that is also a moral model of economics. Unlike Marx and unlike the left-wing anarchists, this model will not be departing from the current system. But I am not against the possibility that it may evolve in the direction that they would want at some point through the moral evolution or the economic evolution of humanity. But to begin with, at least, I'm going to accept the existence, for the sake for now, of capitalism, of government. However, the capitalism that I will accept will be a moral form of capitalism in which people have some guarantee of the right of the fruit to the enjoyment of its production. The government that I will accept is democratic government, where it's broadly participatory. I'm going to show you a book that I recommend reading. It's called Complexity, A Guided Tour by Melanie Mitchell, where it gets into complexity theory. And by the way, a lot of complexity theorists are physicists and scientists who broadly comment on economics, even though that's not their field. So for those of you who say that I'm not an economist, I shouldn't be commenting on it, tough. Okay, if they can do it, I can do it. But it gets into the idea of bottom-up social organization. Now, I have some differences. It's a very good book, Complexity, A Guided Tour by Melanie Mitchell. I have some differences with it. In particular, just a few differences, but the idea of complex systems as being self-organizing, I think, is a very good notion. Obviously, libertarian capitalists and libertarian leftists will disagree over what that will mean. I tend to think maybe this book would take it more from a libertarian capitalist perspective. The bottom-up organization would be free enterprise, and you can't have that socialist government thing clamping down on free enterprise, and by gum, we got to have free enterprise. But I look at it more bottom-up, more as participatory democracy. Bottom-up meaning not necessarily market mechanisms, but social organization. She talks about the idea of a hub, where you have the hubs where people connect and then the outliers. I believe we can all be part of the hub. Maybe that's not true in the Darwinian sense of nature, but the Darwinian does not imply a social ought. Even Richard Dawkins agrees with that. And I would say to Stefan Molyneux that social Darwinism does not have to define our future here. So if social Darwinism is out, and if utopianism is not practical at the present, what could work? And that would be what I call AC economics, or the Tesla model. We, in our economic system, run on direct current. We have a transfer of wealth, and every working person knows this. There's a transfer of wealth from you to the bank, to the utility company, and if you try to own your own home, to property taxes, right? Supposedly it goes to schools, but I know firsthand that schools are underfunded. So you have property taxes to fund the interests of your local politicians. This is direct current. And if you have direct current through an inductor coil, you'll get a magnetic field, but you will not be able to stimulate, it won't be able to work as a transformer to step up the voltage. Whereas AC current, with the change of flux, you can. Now you'll step up the voltage, you're not going to violate conservation of energy, so current has to go down. I understand that. But with that economic induction in the coil, you then have the capability of powering well, in terms of regular electricity, you can power the electrical grid much easier than with DC. And with economics, if you have a transfer of wealth both ways, a lot of wealth, then you're powering the economy in a spiral upwards. You're investing in what it takes to build spaceships and get us to Mars. You're investing in what it takes to get us off of oil so that we're not addicted to oil any longer. You're investing in what it takes to create economic prosperity. Now, how do you do that in a way that then preserves equity? It's very simple. AC, alternating current. If I have a share of the GNP, and that share is understood to be owned by every single person in the economy as a joint stock, and if I'm the government and I'm printing currency, it's not printed by private bankers anymore where they charge interest on it, it's being printed by Congress, by we the people, then that can go to every single American, or if it's a world thing, to every single person on the globe. And what are they going to do? Well, the very poor aren't going to hold on to it. They're going to spend it. I mean, they have to. You have to survive. So when you spend something, it stimulates more spending. The poor get money, which is necessary to survive. And then the economy gets exactly what they gave to the poor back in the form of consumer spending. And this stimulates engineering, it stimulates technology, and then it stimulates economic activity away from the idea of finance where it's just moving money around. Maybe this will appeal to Stefan Molyneux in some ways. Well, not the government aspect of it, but at least the idea of valuing engineering and technology over and above abstract moving money around. I tend to think that maybe he might agree with that. Maybe that's an olive branch between us at this point. But it would require not just the action of taking economic power away from the bankers and from the elites, which he might agree with, but it would also require an active democratic participation on the part of the people. We would have to have input into the system to make it work. We would have to elect people who could run it. We would have to be active participants. And because I have a feeling that to really make the system work, there would have to be increased spending in education to have a more educated population. And this would require social spending. It would require a goal of having more economic equity, more economic justice. I haven't fleshed out how this would entirely work. As I say, I'm not an economist, but I believe, in contrast to the market libertarian interpretation of complexity theory, where you have the hubs and you have the outliers, and that's just the way it is because that's the way that Darwinian evolution works, I believe in a left libertarian idea that no, nature may work through competition and hierarchy because that's how nature works, but we as human beings are rational and we can build something better. And I believe in the idea that we can, again, I believe in the idea of progress as against its critics, both from the right and from the left. I am an environmentalist, but I don't believe in going back to the hunter-gatherer period. I believe in technology, but I also believe in social justice. And I think it's here that I'm going to end it. I thank Stefan, if you've watched this, I thank you very much. A pleasant time to you.